There are many ways that a colour can become desaturated. One of the most common ways that we desaturate a colour, or how we desaturate a colour, is by adding its complement in. So it's where we mix a yellow and a violet together, an orange and a blue together, a red and a green together. And because they're complementary, opposites on the colour wheel, as they mix with one another, they desaturate, they lose their intensity. Another way of changing the saturation of a colour, though, is to add grey to it. So essentially adding white and black to it. If you take any colour, so for instance, we shall take this yellow. This yellow has an inherent tone to it. So if we were to take a black and white photograph of it, we could compare its tone to the white of the paper. And we would probably say, if we took a black and white photograph of this, is that it is slightly darker than the white of the paper in terms of its tone. And there is a link between tone and saturation, particularly in the way that we're going to look at it here and in how Winifred Nicholson is using it. So yellow tends to be quite light in tone. If we mix a grey, and I'm just going to mix any old grey here, no matter what happens coming off the end of my brush, I don't care. And place that around this square of yellow. That grey enhances the yellow in many ways. What can start to happen is that that grey can take on another colour. It can look different to just grey. But it also starts to have a relationship with that yellow. Now at the moment we're dealing probably, and I've mixed a grey that is darker in tone than our initial yellow square. So you get the double effect of that there being an intensity change or a saturation change, in that we're going from a fully saturated yellow to a desaturated colour or grey. So we have that saturation change, but there's also then a shift in tone, and we probably notice that shift in tone before we notice that shift in saturation. If we want to notice the shift in saturation first, or it be the primary motivator or the primary shifting element that we can see here, is that we need to even up the tone. So we actually need the tone of the grey and the tone of the yellow to be as similar as we can make them, if not exact. So I'm just going to add some more white to this grey. And I'm just going to paint a little bit of that down just to see what's going on. Probably could add a little bit more white to that. And if I paint that same grey, or this lighter toned grey around that same yellow, you can now see that there is a considerable difference between this one and this one. The yellow in this one appears brighter, more luminous than what it did here in this one with the grey, with the darker grey. This yellow has a higher intensity to it. I just got to watch, because working with gouache, they do darken as they dry. So I'm saying that probably that grey is still a little too dark to match in. So let's go again. Let's add a significant amount of white into this. And paint down another yellow square. This is good. You're getting to see these shifts. I'm actually even going to add a little bit more white as well. And we'll go again. Oop, a bit of yellow around. Uh-oh. That might muck things up, but that's all right. So again, you see even with that lighter, we're getting close there. Close enough to be matching in tone. It's that good old gouache drying darker. But again, you can see there's another shift in terms of the glow in this one. All of them do have a degree of glow, and that the yellow appears brighter than its surrounds, definitely. But in terms of them having, I'll say, a feeling of an inner glow, this one tends to have that greater feeling of an inner glow happening there. And this is the same with any of our primary colours. Each of them, if we match them with... so these are colours then, as I said, these primary colours, I'm using them straight out of the tube. I'm not shifting them in terms of their tone. We'll have a look at that in just a moment. So we'll start with that red, which is quite dark in tone compared to the yellow. Mix up a dark grey, and we'll just doing a little sample. Need a bit more black in that. That will do. So again, if we start to surround this red with a grey of equal tone or equal value, it has the appearance of making that red particularly glow. What happens though if we change that red? So what we're actually going to do is I'm just going to add some white to that red and change its value, so it'll become a pink. Like so. I'll paint in a couple of these just so we've got one there ready to go. So we've now changed the value or the tone of the pink. And if we paint down around it with that same grey that I've used with that red previously there, you can start to see there that it doesn't have as much oomph as what this one does here. But we can make that have a greater, or this pink appear of a greater saturation if we surround it with a different, lighter toned grey. Like that there. So again, the shift that you're seeing in this one that makes the pink stand out is the fact that there's a tonal difference. When you start to match the grey with the tone of the colour there in the centre, what becomes the more dominant aspect of the two is the saturation. And you can see that even now that that yellow one up there settled down more. That there has a greater sense of glowing and a sort of more internal glow to it than what you see in the earlier ones. And this is a principle essentially that Winifred Nicholson is playing with. She's playing with the fact of offsetting her bright primary colours with areas of desaturated colour of similar tonal element, so the similar tone to those bright colours that she's using, or that she minimises the amount of tones and relies on shifts of saturation to create the shifts of from one plane to the other or one part to the other. And by that, what I mean by that is what she's doing, we'll mix up a fair bit more of that, is that she is taking her colours. So for instance, the yellow. And if we paint that down just as a little spot, and then into what she then is doing with them is that she is mixing greys in with them. So as soon as she starts to create desaturated versions of the same colour. And surrounds them around her. Main area. The contrast makes those initial grade, those initial saturated colours appear brighter. So you can see there with what I've done, there's very little shift in tone, but we've got shifts in saturation. And so it makes that yellow there towards the centre have a greater glow than the areas surround it. And the greyer we make it, as we go out, the more intense it becomes.